Welcome to On the Ballot with Ballotpedia, where we connect people to politics by providing neutral, nonpartisan, and reliable information on our government, how it works, and where it's headed. All right, hello, what's up, everybody? This is Frank Festa, filling in for our host, Norm Leahy. Thank you for being with us. Earlier this week, on June 10th, we had a primary in my home state of New Jersey, which is part of the reason why I'm filling in and so excited to be hosting this episode. We now have our general election set for the governor's race. Mikie Sherrill won the Democratic nomination, and Jack Ciattarelli won the Republican nomination. So the general field is set. We're all ready to go. And today, we're very excited to have an NJ.com reporter with us, a longtime reporter on the New Jersey politics beat, Brent Johnson. Thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so Brent, we have a national audience, so just a reminder to Jersey guys to keep things general as we're talking, make sure we fill in the blanks for people. But how would you sum up the biggest takeaways from the June 10th primary results?
Well, in many ways, this was a battle over the direction of these two parties nationally. On the Democratic side, this is a major race. You had 11 candidates, 5 Republicans, 6 Democrats, and on the Republican side, it was everybody who is the Trumpiest, who can get the Trump support vote, except for one guy who was running as like the kind of not Trump candidate, and he only got 6% in the election. So
Okay.
it goes to show you the party, and the one who got Trump's endorsement, Jack Ciattarelli, got about 67% of the vote. So that'll go to show you where the party stands on that. And the Democratic side was really like a battle for the direction of the party in a tug of war over who is more moderate, who is a progressive, and the winner was the more moderate candidate, but who also has a little bit of progressive cred, Mikie Sherrill, the U.S. Congresswoman. So it was like a microcosm of what's going on nationally with these two parties.
And let's take both candidates one by one. What allowed Mikie Sherrill to pull together a statewide coalition in such a fragmented field, like you mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, she really ran on having a great bio, a good resume. She's a former Navy helicopter pilot, former federal prosecutor, a mother of 4. She's been a congresswoman for 4 terms. So people and the insiders in New Jersey really loved her resume and said you could kind of draw from all parts of the state, and then it ended up being true. She got 34% of the vote, which was more than a lot of people expected, and the other candidates were much more left-leaning. You had the mayor of Newark, Raz Baraka, the mayor of Jersey City, Steve Fulop. They were running in the more progressive lane, and the thought was maybe they split the vote, and the other candidates who were running were more moderates, but they didn't get much of the vote at all. So Cheryl seemed like kind of like the consensus pick.
Yeah, and then talk to me a little bit more about that, liberal to, moderate, spectrum that the Democratic Party has in New Jersey. I feel like if the Democrats had to build a candidate in a lab, they'd probably look a lot like Mikie Sherrill, right?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And that's what she also has the support of a lot of the county parties here, the big time party bosses. And so she kind of got a lot of flack for being quote unquote the establishment candidate. But
Sure.
yeah, I mean, if you look at her bio and look at her talking points, I had former governor Richard Cody. We had a conversation about 3 years ago when she was thinking of running for governor, and Cody told me, I mean, I like everything about her. Her bullet points are outstanding. And that's kind of true. And when you're going up in a state like New Jersey, which is a blue leaning state, but also has a lot of suburbs, has a lot of cities, so there's a big mixture type of voters. That's kind of the kind of candidate you want to have. And she was my point in bringing up the party boss stuff was that during the campaign, she got a lot of flack for that. That was kind of the narrative. You heard her opponents say that all the time. And I've had people who supported her tell me, the real story is that she's a really good candidate. She's a strong candidate.
Sure. And let's switch over to the other side of the aisle if we can. So Ciattarelli swept every county in New Jersey. He beat his closest competition, longtime Central Jersey conservative radio host, Ballotpedia, pretty handily. So what does that say? And also, I should mention, of course, Ciattarelli had Trump's endorsement, which, and historically has mattered a lot. So
Yeah.
what does that say about where the NJ GOP stands in 2025, especially, with President Trump back in the White House and starting to call some shots with who he supports and who he doesn't?
Trump is a fascinating figure in New Jersey for a number of reasons. One, he has a long history here. He owned 3 casinos in Atlantic City for many years, owns 3 very popular golf courses here, spends a lot of his time at his golf course in Bedminster. So, in many ways, New Jersey's like his second home, and he talks a lot about how much he cares about New Jersey. But New Jersey's always been blue. He lost his first 2 presidential elections here by double digits, one of them by 20 points.
Right.
And the thought was that just it's too much of a blue leaning state to like him. And last election, he only lost to Kamala Harris by 6 points, which was unheard of. It was the closest presidential race for a Republican in 30 years
It was a
in
huge
New
swing.
Jersey. Yeah, and part of that was that a lot of voters didn't come out for Harris, but Trump also improved his margins. And so you come into here, Republicans were already feeling very bullish about New Jersey, and the thought was, "Oh, you have to run a moderate race in New Jersey because he's not liked here." But he's very popular with the base.
Hmm.
And so Ciattarelli, who this is the 3rd time he's run for governor, the 2nd time he's been the nominee. His
Right.
first campaign, he called Trump a charlatan and said that he wasn't fit to be president. The next campaign, he kind of straddled the line on Trump, didn't ask for his endorsement, but also didn't mock him. And this time he said, "I've come around to the president." He compared himself to JD Vance and said, "I've come to see the light, and he's been a good president." And he had Spadia really thought he was going to get Trump's endorsement. They fought hard for it. Spadia is
Right.
a much more MAGA-like candidate. He had Trump on his radio show last year, and last year Trump said, "We like you, Bill. You've been with us for the past." And he kind of made fun of Ciattarelli for not supporting him 4 years ago. But Ciattarelli's been leading in all the polls. He led in fundraising, and Trump wants to win. And Ciattarelli flew a helicopter to his golf course. Had took a helicopter ride to his golf course one night a few months ago and met with Trump in person. And they kind of had a burying of the hatchet type thing. And a few weeks later, Donald Trump said, "Jack Ciattarelli's my guy." And I think it really stunned the political establishment in New Jersey because they didn't think he would get involved at all. But I think that was the final nail on the coffin for Bill Spadia, and Ciattarelli cruised on election.
Is it worth saying anything about the 20 or so percent that Spady was still able to receive in the race? Are you reading into that at all or no?
Yes, it was, especially for someone who'd never run for office before or never won an office. He ran for Congress before, but he never won. And the question now is this is a really bitter primary, and I wrote about this in my newsletter this morning.
Hmm.
That it's such a bitter primary, that will those 20% of supporters, come out and now support Ciattarelli? Spady himself has been asked, "Well, would you endorse Ciattarelli?" And he said, "I don't know how I could. The guy's not a real conservative. I don't know how I can do it."
He said that
He's
after
called
the race?
he said that during the final week.
Okay.
So, and he's not said anything since the race ended. He's not been on social media, and he's not returned phone calls. So I don't know what he's thinking, but the thought is
Sure.
in New Jersey, for a Republican to win in New Jersey, which is again is a blue leading state, you need to get all the Republicans and independents who might lean, purple. And if you don't get all the Republicans, you're going to need a lot more independents. So the thought is you need that 20% that supported Spadia. So that's going to be a big question. The Democrats have already coalesced around Sherrill and said let's support her. There's not as much a division there, but it's an open question. The Republican, will some of those people stay home?
Yeah, I want to talk campaign finance in a second, but you brought up the independent bloc in New Jersey, and my dad never ceases to remind me that the independent bloc in New Jersey is huge. There's a
Yes.
lot of independent voters in New Jersey. So, talk to me about their role here in this upcoming election. How are they feeling? What's your sense? What is your reporting telling you?
Yeah, you could New Jersey, there's the 3 voting blocks. Democrats are the largest. The second largest is unaffiliated independents, and the third largest is Republican. So it's a state where the independents in the middle really matter because they swing the elections here. And that's why, even though we're a blue state for federal elections, we go for Senate and we go for the House for the most part, in
Mhm.
blue in the state legislature. But for the governor's race, we go back and forth between parties. 1961 was the last time New Jersey elected one party terms in a row.
Wow.
Well, it's been 64 years. I joke that's 3 years before the Beatles appeared on Ed Sullivan and a year before my beloved New York Mets even existed.
Wow.
So, it was a long time, the Mets hadn't even existed yet. So, it's a
That's a
long
long.
time. So that favors the Republicans here because people tend to vote here in like, oh, we don't look at party, we look who could run the executive, and kind of they get tired after we've had 2 terms of Phil Murphy, a Democrat here, and maybe they said, "Ah, do we really want a 3rd term of Phil Murphy?" Um,
Right.
But Trump is the factor here. It's whether do you want to turn this into Trump land is the question. But yeah, independents will swing they are a big voting bloc, and it's why Chris Christie defeated John Corzine 2 decades ago. It's
Mm.
why then New Jersey went back to Phil Murphy. It's those people swing the elections, because if it was just the Democrats and Republicans, most likely Democrats would win every governorship here. We're not that kind of state. We are not a deep blue state. We're definitely leaning more purple, especially in recent years.
Right. We'll talk about that lean. I keep coming up with questions, but you're getting me into the questions I got ahead, so I'll pull them ahead for us. No, no worries. Yeah, so most rating agencies have it as lean Democratic to start. I think that's what I've seen mostly everywhere. Again, from your reporting, I know you spoke a little bit to that just a moment ago, but say a little more if you can about both how you see the projection for the race now today and what might change between now and the next however many 5 months or so between now and election day.
Well, this is going everyone. I was on the phone with as many Democratic and Republican insiders as I could yesterday, and everyone
Sure.
said, "Watch out for this general election. This is going to be a bitter, hard fought race." And um, and that's because the state's kind of up in the air. So yeah, leaning Democratic. If I had to say now, the other trend that goes here is that usually, if in New Jersey, usually whoever wins the White House the year, because we're an off year election, we're the first election after a new president.
Right.
Usually whoever wins the White House the year before, the opposite party wins. Although Phil Murphy broke that trend last time. Joe
Mm.
Biden was elected in 2020. Phil Murphy won a second term closely. Jack Ciattarelli, the guy running now, also almost beat him. Came within 3 points last time. But Murphy
Right.
broke that trend. It's the first time in 30 years that that trend had been broken in New Jersey. So yeah, if I had to say now, it probably leans a little bit Democratic, simply because Trump just won the registration numbers, but Republicans have been gaining in registration. And
Right.
Ciattarelli has name recognition, meaning Sherrill does too, of course. She's a congresswoman. But you mostly think most people know her in North Jersey. Ciattarelli ran for governor 3 straight times, has done nothing but campaign the last 4 years. He lost to Murphy by 3 points, which
Mhm.
everyone was shocked at. He was supposed to win by double digits, Murphy. And Ciattarelli came out, conceded, and in his concession speech, he said, "I am running for governor again in 4 years." And he's done nothing but campaign since then. So, those it's not simply black and white when it comes to blue and red in New Jersey. Um, it's going to be really close. And it's really a dual referendum. Do you want 4 more years of a Democrat, or do you want Donald Trump to get a bigger foothold in New Jersey? And I know Trump cares. Trump keeps talking about how much he cares about this race. He held a telephone town hall with Ciattarelli and said,
Mm.
"We have to turn New Jersey blue to red." And he cares a lot about it. And the thought is, he knows Virginia is probably not going to be a pickup this year. He knows Democrats are not a pickup. It's not going to stay red, because Democrats, after everything that happened with Doge, a lot of federal workers live in Virginia. So that's likely going to go blue. New Jersey is and what better way to go into what is likely going to be a very tough congressional midterms next year, saying, "Hey, I flipped blue New Jersey."
Yeah, we do a lot of coverage on Virginia. We're doing a ton of coverage on Virginia this year, and the same trend kind of holds true there. They often go in off-cycle elections for the party that is not in the White House, which I think is a phenomenon that makes a lot of sense. But I mentioned it a couple of moments ago, and I don't want to forget. Let me ask you about campaign finance. It seems like every single race we hear about is the most expensive of its kind, no matter what office it is, whatever what state it is, so on and so forth. Was that true here in this primary? And tell us a little bit more about the campaign finance story moving forward.
Campaign finance was fascinating in New Jersey this year. $122 million spent in just the primary, and that's not even the final total. Already the most expensive state election in New Jersey history. So
Wow.
again, we don't even have the final totals in the primary. This governor's race is already the most expensive if you combine candidate spending and outside spending. Outside spending was really interesting here, because there was a candidate on the Democratic side, Sean Spiller. He's the president of the State Teachers Union, the New Jersey Education Association, and their PAC gave him $40 million to run with, which
Holy cow.
alone is outside spending ever spent in a New Jersey race. It was all union dues, and so teachers are kind of split on that. Teachers would say, "Oh, he was going to be our voice. Like, our union president was going to get right into to the governor's office and be our voice." And then other people were like, "What the hell are you spending my union dues on? Like,
Sure.
this this gubernatorial campaign, and he finished 4th with 10% of the vote. 5th, I'm sorry, 5th. He finished 5th with 10% of the vote. So 5th out of 6th. So right now the question is, do the teachers feel like their money was abused in any way? But yeah, so just put 40 million there alone in outside spending. That's already an expensive race if you just go by that.
Right.
Yeah, it's the most expensive race. I think it's like already the 4th most expensive statewide race in the history of the US according to Ad
Wow.
Impact. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. Every election is gonna be more like this, and the fact that there were so many candidates, and also well-known candidates in the New Jersey sphere.
Right.
You had mayors of cities, congresspeople, former state senate president, the teachers union. On the Republican side, Jack Ciattarelli, who ran 3 times, a popular radio host, a state senator. So it wasn't like sometimes you see we had 11 candidates run in 2017, the year Murphy won, but,
Mhm.
a lot of them weren't well known. This was like a epic tour de force type election, and money flowed like crazy.
Yeah, a ton of big names in it. I think that was, just reading through it. I don't live in the state anymore, but just reading through the roster, it's like that's a who's who. From
Yeah.
especially for the Democrats who could have showed up.
Yes.
Um, Now we've mentioned a couple different themes here, and again, thank you so much, Brent, for your time. Just going to wrap up with
Of
another
course.
question or two. Um, Issues. Let's talk about the issues that are going to dominate the race. And we've mentioned President Trump a few times. We can mention him again. He may very well be the biggest factor in the race. But say a little bit more about the issues that are likely to define the campaigns for both major candidates. Affordability, property taxes, transit crime, the classic factors. What issues are animating this race this year?
Well, New Jersey is always gonna be affordability is always gonna be a big deal here. We have the most expensive property taxes in the country. The average property tax bill in New Jersey topped 10,000 last year, which is for people who live in Virginia or Iowa might be like, "What?" It's an expensive state to live in.
Right.
And part of that is because we have a good school system and it pays for that. But still,
Sure.
property taxes are always at the tip of everyone's tongue when it comes to election seasons. So you'll hear most of them talk about affordability, and Ciattarelli will say, under the Democrats, spending is increased, and do we really want to see that continue? So local issues are going to rule the day here. That's the other thing that Trump will be a major factor, but at the end of the day, a lot of people vote with their pocketbooks here.
Right.
And on top of that is, again, Trump, I keep having everyone tell me that I keep mentioning the 1961 thing, that, Democrats would break a 64-year trend if they won. And people are like, yeah, but we've never had a president like Donald Trump before. And like you throw convention out the window with him. And so that's what you're going to see. Sherrill already came out swinging in her victory night speech saying, Ciattarelli's a Trump lackey. He's a ghost of elections past. You want Donald Trump in Trump bracket, which is the governor's mansion. If you want him in the governor's office, then elect Jack Ciattarelli. Otherwise, vote for me. And Ciattarelli said the same thing. She's Murphy 2.0. So, which is, again, the overriding theme here. And he's also going to attack her as being far left, um, which she's not really, but that's what always happens here. Everyone's extreme once you get to these elections.
Sure. Yeah. A
Um,
lot of finger pointing.
but yeah, you've already saw it on election night. Trump came up big time, and Ciattarelli made a joke. He said, if we have a drinking game and you bring up every time Mikie Sherrill brings up Donald Trump, take a shot. That's what it's going to be. You're going to hear Trump all over the place. And can we afford as a state to have another Democrat in office? So that's the boil, the boiled down version of what this race is going to be like over the next few months. And again, it's going to be intense. And we kind of go into a lull in the summer, but September and October, all of us are like already projecting that it's going to be vicious.
Sure. Well, I hope you enjoy some respite this summer and in
Yeah.
preparation for that. When is our first debate?
That they haven't been set yet. Usually they wait till September. You probably won't see them over the summer. July and August here, they tend to campaign, but it's not as people tend to start really paying attention in September. So there are usually 2 debates, one in September, maybe one in October. But those
Cool.
are those are going to be fun.
I can imagine we're going to keep an eye on both of those. And before I let you go, Brent, people forget, right? Nationally, most eyes are on the governor's race, but there were other issues and contests on the ballot, obviously
Yes.
on primary day. What else caught your attention that would be interesting, for our national audience? Anything else stick out to you? Any surprising results or races that might be particularly interesting that you might be paying attention to?
All 80 seats in the state assembly, which is the lower house of the New Jersey legislature, were on the ballot. Democratic state, so Democrats control the state senate and the state legislature. Ciattarelli's talked about how he'd like to flip the legislature, and that starts with these races in the assembly. We had a thing called the county line in New Jersey. This is a little esoteric, but it's interesting for people who don't live here. In New Jersey, the
Sure.
only state in the nation had whoever the party backed. So whoever the party bosses and the county parties backed got their name first on the ballot in all 21 counties. So
Okay.
that gave them a big advantage in New Jersey. So whoever the
Huh.
party back candidate was in the primary had a line where it was just you wanted to vote down the line because that's who the party backed. And it made it impossible, nearly impossible, for off the line candidates to win. A judge tossed that last year when U.S. Senator Andy Kim won his race because he said, this is unfair. And he sued and they threw it out. So this was part of the reason this race was so big, was that it was an even playing field. Now we just have ballots where everybody's name is listed under one office. And so what we saw in the assembly, that didn't really change the governor's race. Mikie Sherrill, the party-backed candidate, won, and Jack Ciattarelli, the party-backed candidate, won. But at the assembly races, you had a bunch of incumbents lose. And so all
Mm.
of a sudden, first time in New Jersey, these incumbents who kind of sit around expecting to be reelected started losing their seats, and they're going to have to campaign a lot more in future years. So New Jersey's kind of in a bit of an upheaval right now. This is a new territory. We're known as like a corrupt, boss-driven state, unfortunately. Us in Chicago, those are always the two
Sure.
jokes. And now the thought is that it's an era of reform. But what's funny is Steve Fulop and Raz Baraka ran kind of anti-establishment campaigns against Sherrill, saying now's the
Right.
time to really change things in New Jersey. And in the end, she still won. And what I heard people say was, don't simply say it's because she was backed by the party bosses. She's a good candidate. She has a good resume. And that's what I kept hearing from a lot of people. So, to bring it full circle back to what we started
Yeah.
off, it's going to be a good race. You have two very well-known, very well-financed, very good on paper candidates in Jack Ciattarelli and Mikie Sherrill. And this is really going to be a race to watch. With all due respect to Virginia, lovely state, but this is the state to watch this year, in my opinion.
That's the Jersey pride, though. We gotta,
Yeah.
respect for the Virginia. Jersey's where it's at. I understand. I
Well,
feel like I always crack up when I hear about the boss system too. Obviously, we're not accusing anybody of having any mob ties, but it just fits the
oh,
New Jersey stereotype too perfectly, right?
yeah, the show Boardwalk Empire about Atlantic City from a few
Right.
years ago. That's the idea, is that there's these guys in back rooms and who just have their fingers, like puppets and controlling everything. That's the
Yeah.
I don't know how true that is, but that's the reputation, unfortunately, of New Jersey. But they're trying to break that right now. That's the idea, is they're trying to be reformers. And Mikie Sherrill, to her credit, is trying to say that she's going to come in and break the status quo too. So we'll see.
Nice. We'll see what happens, Brent. And thank you so much again for your time. We'll have to have you on and talk a little bit closer to the election. So thank you again so much. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and for our listeners, thank you for tuning in. You can learn more about the New Jersey elections, both the primary results and some of the other contests going on down ballot. At the link in our show notes, we'll also link some of Brent's reporting there for you to read. I'm Frank Festa, again, the producer of the show, filling in for our host, Norm Leahy. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and thank you so much for listening. We'll see you again next week.